I used to believe that blood was the strongest bond in the world. I believed that sharing a last name meant you had a built-in army, a group of people who would shield you from the coldest storms. But I was wrong. Sometimes the people who share your blood are the ones holding the shears, waiting for the perfect moment to cut you out of the family tree entirely. My name is Clara. For 26 years, I lived in the shadow of my older sister. Chloe was everything I wasn't: loud, charismatic, and fiercely ambitious. She wore our family name like a designer crown, constantly reminding everyone of our heritage. You see, our family wasn't just ordinary. We were the caretakers of a massive, historical estate and a legacy built by our grandfather, Arthur. Grandpa Arthur was a self-made man, a quiet giant who valued humility, hard work, and kindness above all else. But as he grew older and his health began to fail, the vultures in our family started circling, and Chloe was leading the pack. I never cared about the money or the grand estate. To me, Grandpa Arthur was just the kind soul who taught me how to garden, the man who listened to my quiet dreams when everyone else talked over me. Because I chose a quiet life as a school teacher, rather than chasing corporate titles, Chloe viewed me as a stain on the family reputation. To her, I was just a ghost wandering through the halls of our family's history. The storm finally broke on a rainy Sunday evening during our family dinner. Grandpa was resting upstairs, too frail to join us. Chloe sat at the head of the table, looking at me with a cold, calculating disdain that chilled me to the bone. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper that echoed in the quiet room. "Look at you, Clara," she sneered, tossing a magazine down. "You bring absolutely nothing to this family. You're a nobody. You don't deserve our family name." The room went completely silent. My mother looked away, and my father cleared his throat but said nothing. The betrayal pierced through me, sharp and sudden. My own sister was publicly stripping me of my identity, and the silence of my parents was a second blade in my heart. I felt smaller than I ever had, tears stinging the backs of my eyes as Chloe smiled, satisfied with the devastation she had caused. But what Chloe didn't know that day was that every single word she spoke had traveled much further than the walls of the dining room. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. "You don't deserve our family name." I sat there, my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces, staring at the plate in front of me. The emotional struggle was overwhelming. For years, I had excused Chloe's cruelty as mere sibling rivalry. I had swallowed my pride, kept the peace, and stayed quiet just to keep our fragile family from fracturing. But sitting at that table, watching my own parents refuse to meet my eyes, something fundamental shifted inside me. The pain was still there, a deep, throbbing ache, but beneath it, a quiet spark of strength began to ignite. I was tired of apologizing for existing. "Is that really how you feel?" I asked, my voice trembling but clear. Chloe laughed, a sound completely devoid of warmth. "It's the truth, Clara. You're a liability. When Grandpa passes, this estate, our legacy, it needs strength. It needs people who actually matter. You're just a parasite clinging to a name you did nothing to earn." Before I could even process the cruelty of her words, a heavy thud echoed from the doorway. We all turned, frozen. There stood Grandpa Arthur. He was gripping his walking cane so tightly his knuckles were stark white. He was breathing heavily, his frail frame shaking not from weakness, but from pure, unadulterated anger. He had heard everything. He had dragged himself out of bed, leaning on the banister, just to witness how his family treated his youngest granddaughter when they thought he was safely tucked away. The arrogance drained from Chloe's face in an instant. She turned pale, stepping toward him. "Grandpa, you should be resting." I was just quiet, Grandpa whispered. The word wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of an iron gavel. He walked into the dining room, refusing my father's hand when he tried to help him. He kept his eyes locked entirely on Chloe. The disappointment in his gaze was absolute. I built this legacy on respect, humility, and love, Grandpa said, his voice gaining strength with every word. I built it so my family would always have a sanctuary. I did not build it to raise arrogant bullies who measure human worth by titles and greed. Chloe tried to defend herself, her voice desperate. Grandpa, I'm just thinking about the future of our name. Clara doesn't care about it like I do. Grandpa looked at her, a profound sadness washing over his weathered face. You think a name is just a label on a building. Chloe, you think it gives you the right to look down on the very sister who spent her weekends washing your clothes and tending to my medicine while you were out building your status. You claim Clara doesn't deserve this family name. Grandpa paused, taking a deep, shuddering breath. Then neither do you. The silence that followed was deafening. Chloe stared at Grandpa, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. What? What do you mean? She stammered, a sudden panic piercing through her polished exterior. Grandpa didn't answer her. Instead, he looked at me, his eyes softening into the warm, loving gaze I had known my entire life. Clara, my dear, please call Mr. Vance. Tell him to bring the paperwork we discussed last month. It's time to finalize everything. Mr. Vance was Grandpa's lifelong attorney. Within an hour, he was sitting in the study, spread out across the heavy mahogany desk. The entire family was gathered, the tension in the room so thick it was hard to breathe. Chloe was fidgeting, trying to catch Grandpa's eye, but his gaze remained fixed on the legal documents in front of him. Let it be known, Grandpa Arthur announced clearly, his voice echoing with absolute authority, that as of tonight, the terms of my will and the family trust have been permanently altered. Chloe has shown that she does not embody the values of this family. Therefore, she is being entirely removed from the inheritance, the estate, the funds, and the management of our family foundation will be placed solely in the hands of Clara. Chloe gasped, leaping to her feet. You can't do this. This is insane. She's a school teacher. She destroyed everything I've worked for. You didn't work for any of this, Chloe, Grandpa said calmly. You just expected it. And furthermore, since you believe names must be earned, you will no longer receive a single dime of assistance from the family funds that bear it. You want to be powerful. Go build your own name. Because as far as this family is concerned, you are on your own. The consequences were swift and devastating for Chloe. Without the family's financial backing, her extravagant lifestyle collapsed. The social circles she had fought so hard to impress turned their backs on her the moment they realized she had been disowned. She was exposed for what she truly was, a hollow shell driven by vanity. Months have passed since that fateful night. Grandpa Arthur passed away peacefully a few weeks later. Knowing his legacy was safe, I took over the estate, converting a large portion of the grounds into a community learning center for underprivileged children, honoring the true spirit of my grandfather. Looking back, I realized that names carry no inherent power. They don't make you noble, and they don't make you superior. A name is merely a promise to live with integrity, kindness, and love. Chloe sought to destroy my dignity, but in her greed, she only exposed her own emptiness. I finally found my peace, not because I inherited an estate, but because I learned that the only person who can truly define your worth is you. Grandpa Arthur's departure left a massive void in my heart. The estate was quiet now, no longer filled with his booming laughter or the tapping of his cane. But as the sole trustee of the family fortune, I didn't have time to mourn in peace. I threw myself into his dream, converting the eastern wing of our grand estate into the Arthur Memorial Learning Center for Underprivileged Children. I wanted the family name to stand for hope, not greed. For the first few months, Chloe seemed to have vanished. She had been forced out of her luxury apartment. Her credit cards were frozen, and the elite friends who once chanted her name now blocked her number. I almost felt a pang of guilt, wondering if justice had been too harsh. But what I didn't know back then was that a wounded, Predator is at its most dangerous when it goes silent. Chloe wasn't learning a lesson. She was calculating her next move, waiting in the dark for the perfect moment to strike me down. It started with small things: missing documents from the estate office, strange phone calls in the middle of the night, where there was nothing but heavy breathing on the other end, and whispers among the remaining staff. Then the real nightmare began. One morning, two federal auditors showed up at my doorstep with a warrant. They claimed there was a massive financial fraud tied to the family. Foundation agreements, signed with my forged signature, showing that millions of dollars, meant for charity, were being funneled into private offshore accounts. My world came crashing down. The headlines the next day were brutal. School teacher turns charity into personal piggy bank. I was shattered. I sat in my empty living room, staring at the walls, realizing that someone had meticulously planned my destruction. And then my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. But when I answered, that familiar, arrogant laugh sent a shiver down my spine. "Do you like your new title, Clara?" Chloe's voice hissed through the speaker, dripping with venom. "I told you that you don't deserve that name. If I can't have the legacy, I will make sure it burns to the ground with you inside it." The betrayal ran deeper than I could have ever imagined. Chloe hadn't worked alone. To pull off a financial scam of this scale, she needed insider access. As the investigation deepened, the emotional struggle became almost too much to bear. I discovered that my own parents, unable to accept that their golden child had been disowned, had given Chloe the old security codes to the estate's private study. They had chosen her ambition over my innocence. Standing in the courtroom during the preliminary hearing, looking at my sister who was sitting in the gallery with a triumphant smirk, I felt utterly broken. My own family had framed me. The community looked at me with disgust. The kids I wanted to help were kept away from the center, and Grandpa's name was being dragged through the mud. "Why are you doing this?" I confronted my mother outside the restroom during a court recess. She couldn't look me in the eye, but her voice was cold. "Chloe belongs in high society. Clara, you ruined her life over a few harsh words at a dinner table. You brought this on yourself." That was the breaking point. Hearing my mother justify the destruction of my life made something snap inside me. The tears that had been falling for weeks suddenly dried up. The pain turned into a cold, hard resolve. They thought I was weak because I was quiet. They thought because I was a school teacher, I didn't know how to fight. But Grandpa Arthur hadn't left me the estate just because I was kind. He left it to me because he knew I had the integrity to protect it. I refused to be a victim anymore. I hired a private forensic investigator and began digging into Chloe's life over the past 3 months. If she wanted to play a game of shadows, I was going to bring the sun. We traced the IP addresses used to access the foundation's bank accounts. They didn't lead to an offshore server. They led to a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city, a motel where Chloe had been staying under a fake name. But we needed the final, undeniable proof: the physical laptop she used to forge my digital signatures. The climax unfolded at the grand reopening of the estate foundation, an event Chloe had boldly crashed. Assuming my arrest was imminent, she walked in wearing a flashing red dress, acting as if she was already the rightful heir returning to claim her throne. Reporters were everywhere asking her questions about my alleged fraud. "It's a tragedy," Chloe told the camera, wiping a fake tear. "My sister simply couldn't handle the responsibility. The family name has been tarnished. The only thing tarnished here is your illusion of control, Chloe." My voice echoed through the microphone from the main stage. The crowd turned. I walked up to the podium, flanked not by lawyers, but by 2 officers from the Financial Crimes Unit. Behind me, the massive digital screen, which was supposed to show a slideshow of the charity's work, flickered and changed. On the screen appeared a high-definition video. It was security footage from a hidden nanny cam I had installed in Grandpa's old study weeks ago, anticipating someone might return. The video clearly showed Chloe using my mother's key, entering the room in the dead of night, opening the safe, and using a specialized scanning device to copy my legal stamps and signature templates. The room gasped. Chloe's face turned from arrogant satisfaction to pure, unadulterated terror. That's not all, I continued calmly, clicking a button. The screen shifted to show a direct live stream of the police raiding her motel room, recovering the exact laptop, the forged documents, and a ledger detailing how she planned to frame me and force the board to hand the estate over to her. The consequences were immediate, absolute, and televised. The reporters who Chloe had invited to witness my downfall became the ones broadcasting her live arrest. She screamed, kicking and cursing my name as handcuffs were slapped onto her wrists. She was charged with grand larceny, forgery, and corporate sabotage crimes that carried a mandatory 10-year prison sentence. My parents sat in the corner, ruined by the shame of their complicity, realizing they had lost both of their daughters because of their toxic pride. Today, the estate is finally at peace. The learning center is thriving, filled with the loud, joyful voices of children who actually deserve a future. Looking out over the gardens Grandpa and I used to tend, I realized that true revenge isn't about hurting those who hurt you. It's about building something beautiful out of the ruins they left behind. Chloe tried to erase me to save a name, but in the end, she erased herself from the only family she ever had. And as for me, I finally know exactly what my name is worth.